Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Get ready to uncover one of the greatest mysteries in history. Who was Abraham? A patriarch revered by billions, central figure of three great religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, but whose true identity and origin remain an enigma that defies centuries of study. He was not an Israelite, for Israel did not yet exist. He was not a Jew. So what was he? A Hebrew, perhaps, one of those who crossed the river, coming from ancient Mesopotamia. But is that simple definition enough to capture the grandeur and complexity of this man who shaped the destiny of nations? Join us on this fascinating journey as we dive deep into history to uncover the hidden layers behind the name Abraham. Are you ready to question everything you thought you knew? The great question that echoes through the halls of history and faith, and which few dare to explore with the depth it deserves, is, where exactly did Abraham come from? What was his homeland, his native culture, his true ancestral origin? Amid ancient narratives and time-honored traditions, this documentary sets out to delve into that ancestral mystery, peeling back the layers of time and silence surrounding the patriarch. We will explore historical records, the sacred texts in their deepest nuances, and the archaeological evidence rising from the earth to uncover the truth behind the man who would become the father of many nations. Prepare for a captivating journey where faith intertwines with history and the divine is revealed through the human. Abraham is undoubtedly one of the most enigmatic and monumental figures of ancient history, a true pillar of civilization and spirituality. Universally known as the supreme patriarch of the Abrahamic peoples, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, he left a legacy that not only echoes, but resounds with unshakable force through the ages. His influence transcends religious boundaries, shaping not only the doctrines and traditions of these major faiths, but also a vast and intricate network of lineages and cultures that are often overlooked or forgotten in more mainstream accounts. Traditional records tell us that Abraham was the direct ancestor of the Israelites through his son Isaac, the son of promise, and of the Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, who would later become the 12 Arab tribes, nomadic and warrior peoples who roamed vast desert regions. However, what many ignore, or perhaps choose not to explore, is that his lineage was even broader and more diverse, encompassing other groups and nations whose stories, though crucial, have gradually been relegated to the shadows of collective memory, waiting to be rediscovered. Among these lesser-explored branches are the Edomites, also known as the Idumeans, a rugged and resilient mountain people whose royal blood and cultural identity flowed directly from Abraham through Esau, Jacob's brother. In addition, there is a frequently forgotten yet deeply significant connection with the Midianites, a mysterious people of merchants and shepherds whose role in antiquity, especially in biblical narratives, continues to raise questions and debates among historians and theologians. This branch of Abraham's descendants came through his son Midian, a name that unfortunately receives little attention in traditional accounts but holds strategic importance in understanding the interactions among Semitic peoples of the era. But there is an even more surprising and revealing detail in this genealogical story, one that challenges common perceptions. While most people, based on a superficial reading of the texts, believe that Abraham had only two sons, Isaac and Ishmael, ancient records, when examined closely, indicate that he was actually the father of at least 8 sons. And here lies one of the most overlooked and yet most fascinating aspects of his life. After Sarah's death and the birth of Isaac, Abraham married a woman named Keturah, whose name, translated from Aramaic, carries the profound meaning of promised or fragrant, suggesting a figure of great dignity and purpose. Who was Keturah? Textual evidence and some rabbinic traditions suggest she may have been of Hebrew or Aramaic origin, a woman of crucial importance not only for the continuation of Abraham's lineage, but also for the expansion of his divine promise. She was not a secondary figure, but a matriarch who bore 6 sons, each of whom became the progenitor of tribes and peoples that spread across the East. Her union with Abraham in his old age demonstrates the persistence of divine blessing and God's power to multiply the patriarch's offspring beyond human expectations. Abraham's impressive lineage, blessed and expanded by divine design, extended through generations, profoundly shaping the history and geography of ancient peoples. With Keturah, his second wife and companion in the final years of his life, Abraham had 6 more sons: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Among them, Midian, as already mentioned, is a name that would echo through the centuries, giving rise to a people who interacted significantly with the Israelites at various points in their history. But Abraham's descendants did not end there. They branched out in a complexity that reflects the magnitude of the divine promise. Through Ishmael, the firstborn whom he had with Hagar, the Egyptian servant, Abraham became the grandfather of 13 grandchildren, each of whom left an indelible mark on the ancient world by founding clans and establishing territories. In order of birth they were Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. Among them, Ma'alat, also called Basmath, stands out. She would later become one of Esau's wives, weaving unexpected and complex ties between distinct lineages, uniting what once seemed separate and revealing the intricate tapestry of divine providence. On the other hand, the lineage of Isaac, the son of the promise, through whom the main covenant would be carried forward, followed a path just as remarkable and, at times, dramatic. As a grandfather, Abraham witnessed the birth of the twins Esau and Jacob, whose destinies, though born from the same womb, diverged drastically, symbolizing divine choice and the complexity of human relationships. Like Ishmael, Jacob also expanded the patriarch's family tree exponentially, fathering 13 children who would become the 12 tribes of Israel, the nation chosen by God. Among them were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And among the few women highlighted in the genealogy stands Dinah, his only explicitly mentioned daughter in Scripture, whose story, though brief, is full of meaning. Esau, in turn, followed his own path, marked by his rugged nature and deep connection to the land, and had children who continued his lineage, giving rise to the Edomites: Eliphaz, Reuel, Jush, Korah, and Jalam. Their descendants shaped territories and nations south of Israel, leaving a legacy that echoed throughout the history of Middle Eastern peoples, often in conflict, yet always interwoven into the greater Abrahamic narrative. The complex genealogy of Abraham expanded not only in number, but also in influence and divine purpose. Each branch of this lineage gave rise to peoples who would play crucial roles in the history of salvation and in the formation of the ancient geopolitical landscape, showing that the promise made to him, that he would be the father of many nations, was fulfilled in an impressive and multifaceted way, revealing God's sovereignty over human history. The descendants of Jokshan, son of Abraham and Keturah, played a key role in the formation of tribes that populated the Levant and the Arabian Peninsula. Among them, Sheba and Dedan stand out, names associated with trade routes and prosperous kingdoms. In addition to the sons of Midian, Ephah, Abida, Eldah, and Hanok. These lineages gave rise to peoples who settled in the vast regions that today correspond to Jordan, parts of Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and neighboring territories, spreading Abraham's seed throughout the Promised Land and beyond. In recent times, the origin of Abraham, the patriarch of the 3 great monotheistic religions, has become the subject of intense debate and questioning, both in academic and popular circles. Due to a regrettable lack of deeper historical and etymological understanding, many still identify him simplistically as the Hebrew, or even more anachronistically, as the Jew. However, it is crucial to emphasize that this classification, though common, does not align with historical facts or the complexity of ancient identities. Abraham was not a Jew in the ethnic religious sense we understand today, since Judaism as an organized faith only came into being centuries later, with Moses and the formation of the nation of Israel. Nor was he Hebrew in the modern sense of the term. The title of Hebrew was attributed to him not based on a predefined ethnicity, but due to his monumental migration, when, through an act of faith and divine obedience, he crossed the great river, the Euphrates, leaving behind his homeland and culture in ancient Mesopotamia. The word Hebrew, in Hebrew, Ivri, originates from the term Ivri, which literally means one who crosses, he who comes from the other side, or the traveler. This designation was not a fixed ethnic label, but a description of his status as a migrant and his act of crossing geographic and cultural boundaries. It directly refers to Abraham's epic journey across the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers, as he left the prosperous and idolatrous city of Ur of the Chaldeans, a major center of Mesopotamian civilization, in search of the land promised by a divine voice, a land he did not yet know, but in which he placed all his hope and faith. This crossing was not only physical, but spiritual as well, marking his separation from a pagan world and his commitment to the one true God. During his time in Egypt, an ancient empire with a rich and complex culture, Abraham was identified by the Egyptians as a Hyksos. This term, often misunderstood and wrongly associated with invaders, did not refer to a specific people or homogeneous ethnicity, but rather to a broader category of foreign inhabitants, predominantly Semitic, who settled in Egypt without being native. The Hyksos were mostly Semitic peoples from pastoral regions of the Near East, encompassing a diversity of tribes and groups such as Arameans, Akkadians, Assyrians, and other Levantine and Mesopotamian peoples who migrated in search of pasture, trade, or refuge. Their presence in Egypt, especially during the Second Intermediate Period, is a testament to the intense interactions and population movements of that era. The name Hyksos has roots in the Greek language, uxos, Hyksos, but its origin lies in ancient Egyptian, where it was expressed as Heka Kasawet, which can be accurately translated as shepherd kings or foreign rulers. This designation was not pejorative. Rather, it reflected the status of these peoples as leaders of migrant communities who often assumed positions of influence and even political power within Egyptian society, particularly in the Nile Delta. They brought with them new technologies, such as the war chariot and the composite bow, and influenced Egyptian culture in various ways. According to the detailed accounts in the Book of Genesis, Abraham, together with his father Terah, departed from Ur of the Chaldeans, one of the oldest and most important cities of Mesopotamia, located in what is now southern Iraq, toward the land of Canaan. However, before reaching their final destination, they temporarily settled in Haran, or Padan Aram, a strategic region in modern-day Syria and an important commercial and cultural hub. Only after his father's death and a renewed divine calling did Abraham continue his journey to Canaan and eventually to Egypt, where his presence is recorded within the vast and complex historical context of Semitic migrations that characterized the Bronze Age. Given this backdrop of intense mobility and cultural exchange, it is highly likely that the Egyptians saw Abraham as a Hyksos, associating him with the groups of Middle Eastern foreigners who, over centuries, settled in Egypt, bringing with them their customs, livestock, and sometimes their deities. To the Egyptians of that era, he was not merely an isolated traveler, but part of a long tradition of migratory peoples who challenged borders and intermingled with the great civilizations of the ancient world, contributing to the richness and complexity of the region. Specifically, Abraham may have been identified with a subgroup of the Hyksos known as the Shasu. The Shasu were nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes from the Middle East, possibly originating from the area of modern-day Iraq and the Syrian-Arabian desert. They were known for their mobility and pastoral lifestyle. Some scholars suggest that, even while still in Ur of the Chaldeans, the Akkadians may have referred to Abraham as Shutu, a term used to describe various Semitic peoples, including the Arameans, semi-nomadic tribes who lived in the regions of Syria and Mesopotamia and who, like Abraham, were shepherds and merchants. Furthermore, a line of scholarly thought suggests that both in Egypt and Canaan, Abraham might have been called a Habiru or Apiru. These terms appear in various ancient sources, especially in cuneiform texts from Mesopotamia, such as the Amarna letters, and in Egyptian inscriptions. It is important to note that Habiru was not an ethnic designation, but a social classification. Contrary to what one might think, the Habiru, or their variations such as Habiru and Apiru, did not represent a specific ethnic group or nation. Instead, the term was used to categorize a heterogeneous social stratum composed of migrants, outsiders, stateless individuals, and often those who lived on the margins of traditional power structures and established societies. These groups frequently operated outside social conventions, sometimes as itinerant laborers, mercenaries, bandits, or even small clan leaders, seeking opportunities and survival in a world of constant upheaval. The term Habiru, therefore, described a way of life and a social condition, not a tribal origin. Within this multifaceted context, it is entirely plausible that Abraham, as he migrated from Ur to Canaan and later to Egypt, was identified in different ways depending on the peoples and cultures he encountered on his journey. From various local perspectives, he could have been seen as a Shasu, a Shutu, or a Habiru, all terms that in one way or another carry the same essential meaning. A foreigner from the east, a tireless traveler without fixed routes, a clan leader crossing lands and borders, always moving, always seeking the fulfillment of a divine promise. His identity, therefore, was fluid and multifaceted, reflecting the complexity of his mission and the vastness of his influence. The Habiru, a term that echoes through various inscriptions from the 2nd millennium BCE, appear in diverse and often marginalized contexts within the societies in which they were mentioned. Ancient accounts describe them in various ways, as laborers, mercenaries, and even as bandits or rebels, frequently living on the fringes of established social structures. However, it is crucial to understand that the term Habiru did not refer to a single ethnic or cultural group with a cohesive identity, but rather to a broad and fluid social category made up of individuals and clans who, for various reasons, be they economic, social, or political, found themselves outside the dominant order, without land or fixed tribal ties. They were, in essence, the dispossessed, the outsiders, those living on the margins of society. Some theories, still the subject of intense academic debate, suggest that the Habiru may have played a significant role in the major migrations and conflicts that marked the end of the 2nd millennium BCE, a period of great upheaval and transformation in the ancient Near East. Their name appears in ancient texts that, according to some scholars, bear intriguing parallels with biblical accounts, raising the possibility that the events and characters described in Scripture may have been influenced by or reflected in the social dynamics surrounding the Habiru. Although there is no consensus on a direct and unequivocal link between the Habiru and specific biblical figures or events, the similarities between historical references and sacred writings remain a subject of vibrant scholarly discussion, enriching our understanding of the historical backdrop of biblical narratives. The difficulty in precisely defining who the Habiru were stems largely from the vague and multifaceted nature of the term, as well as the scarcity of direct and conclusive evidence. What is known is that the Sumerians, Egyptians, Akkadians, Hittites, and Canaanites, including the Ugaritic peoples, used this designation to describe certain nomadic, semi-nomadic, or foreign social groups who did not fit the traditional categories of citizens or subjects. Nevertheless, it is essential to clearly distinguish the term Habiru from Hebrew. While Hebrew, Ivri, means one who crossed over, a reference to Abraham's Mesopotamian origin and his journey of faith and migration, Habiru had a more pejorative or descriptive connotation of social status. It could refer to bandits, slaves, archers, mercenaries, or migrant laborers, denoting a position of marginality or subordination. The story of the Habiru, therefore, remains a mystery shrouded in fragments of evidence, yet their presence and influence are undeniable, appearing as peripheral figures and at the same time active agents of the transformations that shaped the ancient Middle East. The term Habiru or Apiru was first identified in Akkadian texts, the lingua franca of diplomacy and trade in Mesopotamia, and later also found in Ugaritic inscriptions, revealing its wide geographical spread. According to known phonetic shifts in the Northwest Semitic languages, the root of this term may be linked to a word meaning dust or dirt, suggesting a connotation of poverty or a wandering lifestyle. Thus, Habiru might carry the meaning of dusty or dirty, a term often used to describe nomads and wandering groups who lived in precarious conditions and constant movement. While this interpretation may also extend to the general concept of nomad, in the Egyptian context, it is more appropriate to say that Abraham was recognized as a Hyksos, part of the Shasu subgroup, pastoral and semi-nomadic peoples who lived in desert regions and often interacted with Egypt. In his native land of Mesopotamia, however, the Akkadians possibly referred to him as Shutu, a term associated with the Chaldean people, from whom Abraham indeed originated. Nonetheless, despite these various designations and interpretations, the true and deeper identity of Abraham, the one that resonates through the centuries and defines him in essence, was Hebrew. He was a Chaldean by origin, born in Ur, a city representing the height of Mesopotamian civilization, but became known as a Hebrew due to his migration to Canaan, a journey of faith and obedience to a divine calling. The very designation Hebrew arose from the Canaanite recognition that he had crossed the great river, the Euphrates, leaving Mesopotamia to settle in new lands in fulfillment of God's promise. This reference appears explicitly in Genesis 14, when a man of Canaanite origin, after Abraham's victory over the eastern kings, refers to him as Abram the Hebrew, a title that distinguished and identified him as a foreigner who had come from across the river. Interestingly, the term Hebrew reappears later in the book of Exodus, used by the Egyptians, or perhaps inserted by later scribes who, under divine inspiration, used the Phoenician script to record the history of the people of Israel. Some scholars argue that in this context, the word may have acquired a negative connotation, being used to describe the Hebrews as slaves, a subjugated and rightless people. This theory is based on the fact that Habiru or Apiru already carried meanings linked to slaves, mercenaries, and immigrant workers in Canaanite societies, which could have influenced Egyptian perceptions. Thus, Abraham is recognized as a Hebrew from the Canaanite perspective because he was the one who crossed the river toward the land of Canaan, becoming the father of a new nation. For the Egyptians, however, he was a Hyksos, a foreigner from the east, a clan leader with his flocks and family. In his most remote origin, Abraham belonged to the Chaldean people, a Semitic group descending from the lineage of Arpachshad, son of Shem, as interpreted by ancient traditions of Semitic thought, connecting him directly to the line of Noah and the primordial history of humanity. During his stay in the land of Paddan Aram, in the region of Aram, it is highly likely that Abraham adopted the Aramaic language, a Semitic tongue that would become widely spoken in the Near East and reflected in the generations of his descendants. His grandson Jacob, for example, is called an Aramean, a title likely attributed to the ancestry of his mother, Rebekah, and his grandmother Leah, both women of Aramean origin, solidifying the cultural and linguistic ties between the patriarchal family and the Aramean peoples. This fusion of identities and linguistic influences demonstrates the richness and complexity of Abraham's heritage, a man who, throughout his journey, absorbed and transformed the cultures he encountered, always guided by unwavering faith. His story is a testament to divine providence, which weaves the threads of human history in mysterious and magnificent ways. Thank you all for following this deep exploration of Abraham's origins and identity. May the light of knowledge and faith continue to illuminate our paths. May God be with you, and see you soon.
From now on, each of our videos will come with a special guide to help deepen your spiritual journey. With every new video, we lovingly select 10 biblical inspirations to bring comfort and peace to your soul. It's a motivational and inspiring resource, created with care especially for you, who are always with us. And by purchasing this ebook for a symbolic price, you're also helping us continue creating the high-quality content our subscribers truly deserve. The link is in the description.